War does not only destroy cities, sometimes it destroys flight schedule, sometimes it destroys career, and sometimes it changes the life of an Indian software engineer sitting thousands of kilometers away in California. Welcome to another episode of Skyline. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Triti Yatri. Tonight we have 7 big international stories. So let's begin with the story that affects thousands of Indians living abroad. Can you imagine this? You're working in Silicon Valley. You finally receive leave from your company after months. You book your flight to India, your parents are waiting, your relatives are waiting, everything is planned for you. Then suddenly your phone, it vibrates. Your flight has been cancelled. Not because of bad weather, not because of a technical failure, but because of a war that is happening thousands of kilometers away. Well, that is exactly what thousands of NRIs they are experiencing today. The conflict between the US and Iran, it is no longer staying inside the West Asia. It has now entered airports, airlines, and even immigration system. According to information shared in the Indian Parliament, Indian airlines have cancelled nearly 26,000 international flights because of the airspace restrictions created by the ongoing war. Think about the number here, 26,000, and not just one airport. That is not just one airline, that is an aviation crisis. And the biggest victims are often the ordinary passengers. But for Indians living in America and Canada, the risks are much bigger. Let's understand why here. Many Indian professionals working in the US travel home every single year. Here, some come for family emergencies, some come for weddings, some come for visa stamping, some simply wants to spend time with their parents. Normally, they fly through the Gulf, Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi. These airports connect India with North America, but today, many of these routes are under pressure because airlines are avoiding dangerous airspace. Instead of flying over Iran or Iraq, planes are taking much longer route. That means longer flying time, more fuel here, higher cost, fewer available seats, and expensive tickets. Some routes are now taking nearly 3 extra hours. That may not sound huge to you, but for an airline, 3 extra hours means millions of dollars, more fuel, more crew cost, in fact, lower profit and higher ticket prices for passengers. Now comes the immigration problem here. Suppose an H-1B worker travels to India for visa stamping. Suddenly, their return flight, it gets cancelled. Appointment gets delayed, airspace closes again. Days becomes week. In the meantime, their employer expects them back. Projects continue, meeting continue, deadline continue. Some companies allow work from home. Some may not. And you know what? Things, they are becoming more and more complicated because visa timelines do not stop simply because flights stop. And this is why immigration lawyers are advising people to avoid any unnecessary travel during this period of time unless absolutely necessary. This is the new reality. A missile fired in West Asia, it can delay a software engineer returning to Texas. A military strike, it can increase airfare between India and New York. A geopolitical conflict, it can suddenly become your personal problem. And that is what globalization really means. Today, war is no longer local. Its consequences travel faster than airplanes. And yes, while thousands of travelers, they worry about reaching home, another country is preparing for a future that could completely change the balance of power in West Asia. Well, for decades, the West Asia, it has been known for oil. Now another race has begun, a nuclear race. Saudi Arabia says that it wants civilian nuclear energy, electricity, clean energy, future technology. On paper, that sounds completely normal to you, right? Many countries operate civilian nuclear reactors. India does, France does, Japan does. But when West Asia enters the nuclear conversation, the entire world starts paying attention. And you know why here? Because this is one of the most sensitive regions on the planet Earth. Iran already has a controversial nuclear program. Israel is widely believed to possess the nuclear weapons, although it has never officially confirmed. And now, Saudi Arabia wants nuclear technology too. Naturally, questions are being asked. Will it remain only for electricity, or could it one day become something much bigger? Well, that's exactly where America has stepped in. US Secretary of State Mr. Marco Rubio, he has made Washington's position very clear here. America is not saying Saudi Arabia cannot have civilian nuclear technology. No. America is saying that if it happens, it must happen with strict safeguards. According to him, if American companies build Saudi Arabia's civilian nuclear program, Washington will have greater oversight to ensure it cannot be turned into nuclear program. He also warned that if Riyadh partners with another country instead, the US would have much less influence over those safeguards. But yes, there is another message that is hidden inside Rubio's statement: competition. Because today, America is not the only country selling advanced technology. Russia is expanding its nuclear export. China is investing across West Asia. Every major power wants influence here. Every major power wants long-term partnership. And nuclear energy, it creates exactly that. These projects last decades. They create economic dependency, political influence, and strategic partnership. And that is why Washington wants Saudi Arabia inside its own technical ecosystem, not someone else. Well, for Saudi Arabia, this is about Vision 2030, modernization, diversifying beyond oil, building a future economy. For US, it is about influence. For China, it's about expanding its footprint. For Russia, it's about opportunity to challenge Western dominance. And yes, talking of Russia, here is another controversial statement. The whole world knows West Asia is burning, missiles are flying, countries are choosing sides, and now another major power has entered the conversation. Not with weapons, but with words. This time the message came from Russia, and it is directed straight at Washington. Russia's Foreign Minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, he has strongly rejected accusations and allegations that Russia and China are secretly supplying weapons to Iran. Speaking on the sidelines of the Asian foreign ministers' meeting, Mr. Lavrov called these accusations embarrassing, and he accused the West of spreading a false narrative here. But you know what? Mr. Lavrov, he did not stop there. He turned the spotlight back on the US. According to him, America has no moral authority to accuse Russia because Washington itself has been deeply involved in another conflict, the war in Ukraine. Mr. Lavrov, he argued that the US has been providing Ukraine with weapons, intelligence, and technology support, making it an active participant in that conflict. And you know, this is where geopolitics becomes complicated. Every country believes it is supporting its allies. Every country believes that the other side is interfering. America says Russia is helping Iran. Russia says America is helping Ukraine. Both accuse each other of escalating conflict. But both of them deny crossing certain red lines. And in the middle of all of this blame game, ordinary people continue to pay the price here. Mr. Lavrov, he also said something important. He argued that neither the US nor Iran would benefit from a prolonged conflict in West Asia. Instead, he suggested that there are forces trying to keep this war alive because instability serves their interest. Whether one agrees with this assessment or not, it reflects Russia's attempt to position itself as a diplomatic player while simultaneously challenging the Western narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, today the battlefield is no longer limited to missiles and fighter jets. It is also about information. Every government wants the world to believe its version of events. Every statement is carefully crafted. Every press conference becomes part of a larger geopolitical contest. And that is why Mr. Lavrov's remarks, it matters. They are not simply about Russia defending itself. They are about Moscow sending a message to Washington that it refuses to accept American accusations without pushing back. And as tension continues to rise, diplomatic war, it is becoming almost as intense as the military one. But yes, while world leaders exchange accusation, Iran is making an even bigger claim. One that, if it is true, then it could mark one of America's biggest military setbacks in this conflict. Can you imagine one of the world's most advanced air defense systems? A system worth billions of dollars, built to detect and intercept the ballistic missile, a shield that many countries simply cannot afford. Now imagine someone claiming that they destroyed it. That is exactly the claim Iran has made. According to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the famous IRGC, its latest missile strike targeted the strategically important Muwaffaq Southie Air Base in Jordan. Iran claims the attack damaged the THAAD radar system, a Patriot air defense battery, a sea-rammed radar, a fuel storage facility, a helicopter equipment depot, and a helicopter maintenance facility all at once. If these claims are actually true, then the implications could be a lot. The THAAD system, Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, it is considered one of the US's most sophisticated missile defense systems. It is designed to intercept ballistic missiles before they can strike their target. Countries around the globe see THAAD as a critical layer of major air defense system. Now, the Muwaffaq Southie Air Base itself is a strategically important one. It hosts the US military personnel and support the US operation across the region. So any successful attack on such a facility, it would naturally attract global attention. But this is where facts become extremely important. At the time of recording, these claims come from Iranian authorities. They are not independently verified by the US, and it is not confirmed by any sort of international media. And you know what? This distinction matters. During every war, both sides try to shape public perception. Military successes are often highlighted, enemy losses are sometimes amplified, and that is why independent verification, it becomes essential before accepting such claims as fact. However, even without confirmation, the claim itself, it tells us something important here. It shows how information has become another battlefield. Winning the narrative is almost as important as winning on the ground. A single announcement can influence public opinion, financial market, military morale, and diplomatic discussion. You know what? If future evidence confirms Iran's claim, it would remain serious question about the effectiveness of some of America's most advanced defense technology. If the claims are disapproved, it would underline how information warfare is increasingly becoming part of modern conflict. Either way, the story does not end here, because every missile fired in West Asia has another consequences, one that millions of people feel every time they stop at a petrol station. Ladies and gentlemen, the next story is not about missiles. It is not about fighter jet. It is not even about soldiers. It is about something every family understands: money. Because when a war begins in one part of the world, the first question many people ask is, will it affect me? And if you are living in the US or Canada, specifically on an H-1B visa, the answer could be yes. Most people think wars only affect the countries that are involved. But modern wars don't stop at borders. They affect oil, they affect inflation, they affect interest rate, and eventually they affect your monthly budget. Well, according to the data from the US Energy Information Administration, America's strategic petroleum reserve has fallen to one of the lowest level in decades. At the very same time, tensions around the Strait of Hormuz have pushed the oil prices sharply higher, sending fuel prices up once again across the United States. Now, you may ask, why does the price of oil matter to somebody working in California, Seattle, or New York? Let me answer that. Because expensive oil does not only increase petrol prices, it makes transportation more expensive, it raises the shipping cost, it increases the cost of food, goods, service. So, in simple words, almost everything becomes more expensive, and when inflation, it begins rising again, the US Federal Reserve, it faces a difficult decision. Either this year, many experts expected interest rate to come down. Lower interest rate usually help business grow, encourage companies to hire more people, and make borrowing cheaper. But if inflation stays high because of rising energy prices, the Federal Reserve may decide to keep the interest rate high for a long period of time. And this is where the story becomes important for thousands of Indians working in America's tech sector. High interest rate increase the cost of borrowing for companies. When companies spend more on loans, they often spend less on hiring. Expansion plan, it gets delayed, recruitment slows down, hiring freezes, and sometimes company even reduce their workforce, and that means layoff. For Indian professionals working on H-1B visas, this creates another level of uncertainty. Finding a new sponsored job, it becomes much harder when companies are hiring fewer people. If somebody loses their job, they only have limited period of time, probably 60 days, just to secure another employer willing to sponsor their visa. In a slow job market, that becomes much more difficult. The impact does not stop there. Higher interest rate also affect people planning to buy a house. Mortgage rate, it remains expensive, making monthly payments much higher than many families had expected. Well, for thousands of Indian professionals who had planned to purchase homes in the US this year, those dreams may now have to wait a little more. And wait. That is why economists often say that geopolitics and personal finance are deeply connected. A conflict in West Asia can influence the cost of your petrol, your home, your monthly expenses, and even your career opportunity. Sometimes the biggest consequences of the war, it is not seen on the television. They are seen in the household budgets. But yes, while millions of people worry about inflation and job security, one viral video from America has started an entirely different conversation about human cost of war. Wars are fought on the battlefield, right? But today, they are fought on the smartphones. One short video can travel across the world in minutes. It can influence public opinion, it can trigger political debate, and sometimes it can raise more questions than the answer. And that's exactly what has happened with the video that is now circulating widely on social media. The clip appears to show a US soldier delivering an emotional message about the Iran conflict. During the video, the individual uses strong language against the US President, Mr. Donald Trump, and appears to announce that he is leaving military service. That's big. The video quickly went viral. Millions of people, they watched it. Supporters and critics, they flooded social media with reaction. Some described it as an evidence of frustration within the military. Others questioned whether the video represented the views of only one individual, as often happens online. Well, opinion spread much faster than verified information, and this is why it is very important to separate what is visible from what is confirmed. The video does appear to show an individual expressing anger and discussing resignation. However, the full context behind the clip and any official confirmation regarding the reported resignation that remains unclear. Well, in today's digital era, viral content often shapes public perception and conversation before official information becomes available. Governments investigate, news organizations verify, but social media, it moves at a much faster pace. And this is why viewers must be very careful not to confuse viral claim with confirmed facts. Whether this video ultimately reflects a larger issue or remains an isolated incident, one thing is clear. It has once again highlighted how deeply divided opinion have become over the Iran conflict and America's role in the region. Every war creates military challenges, but it also creates political debates, emotional reactions, and public disagreements at home. And finally, our last story takes us from the battlefield of West Asia to the political streets of New York, where a promise that once grabbed global attention, it has now collided with legal reality. During election campaign, politicians often make bold promises. Well, some promise lower taxes, some promise better jobs, and sometimes they make promises that capture headlines across the globe. One such promise came from New York City's Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Well, Mamdani said that if Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu he visited New York, then he would be arrested. The whole statement, it quickly went viral. Supporters praised it, critics called it unrealistic, political leaders across different countries reacted. Well, for many people, it sounded like a strong political message. But now Mr. Mamdani himself has admitted that the reality is far more complicated. In recent interview, Mr. Mamdani acknowledged that the mayor of New York does not have the legal authority to arrest a foreign head of government like Benjamin Netanyahu. He explained that matters involving international law, diplomatic immunity, and foreign leaders, it falls under the jurisdiction of the US federal government, not the office of New York City mayor. Now, this clarification has once again started a political debate. Critics say that Mamdani made a promise that could never legally be fulfilled. Supporters argue that his original comments were intended as a political statement rather than a plan of action. Regardless of where one stands, the episode highlights an important lesson about politics. There is often a big difference between what is promised and what can be done. The controversy also shows how international conflicts are increasingly influencing local politics. A mayor of New York, he is no longer only about housing, transport, or public safety. Global issues like Israel Hamas conflict, international law, and foreign policies are becoming part of local political campaign. What happens thousands of kilometers away, it can now influence debates inside American cities. So today we traveled across the world in just one episode. These may appear to be 7 different stories, but they all are connected by one common theme. In today's world, no crisis remains local for a very long period of time. And that is why understanding world affairs has never been more important. Because today's international headlines, they are tomorrow's personal reality. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dhruti Athri. This was Skyline. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.